Hi everyone, and welcome to Latinx YZ, where we discuss all things related to U.S. politics from a Latino, Latina, and Latinx perspective.
Hola Clemencia.
Hola cariño, ¿cómo estás?
Bien, mi amor. Gusto de verte otra vez.
Igualmente. My name is Clemencia Herrera, and I am the founder of Moira Studio, and as an advertising agency that works in the political and advocacy space, and we target Latinx.
And I am Cecilia del Cid, an environmental and social justice practitioner. I am Latin American, from Guatemala, immigrant, community weaver, and also working on some media spaces.
Awesome. You know what? I love that you say you're Guatemalan. I never say where I'm from. I'm Colombian. Los colombianos that are listening out there.
Sí, que levanten la mano. Yes. So tell me.
All right. So last week we had this amazing conversation. If you haven't listened to it, please go back to episode 10 and listen to the conversation we had with Helen from Hope. And she really invited us to get involved and run for something. She had this beautiful, positive attitude, and she was so optimistic. You know, for someone that's been working in this space for 20 years, you know, you could be jaded and just like totally defeated. But no, she had this just relentless optimism. I loved it.
Yes.
So let's run for something. And now, now we're going to talk about how the events that are happening in this year, which is a redistricting year, can affect this participation.
Yes.
So redistricting year, like what is that? I'm sure a lot of people are like, what's that? There's what are we redistricting?
Tell me what's redistricting.
So redistricting is the process in which they draw all the different district boundaries within a state, and it happens all over the country. And these districts determine representation in Congress, basically, and also at the local. So it's all local and federal level. And the information for the redistricting comes from the census. And the census happens every 10 years. And I don't know if people recall that there was a census last year. So then based on that data, the next year there is redistricting. This year there's a lot of delays because of COVID. The census was delayed. They gave people a couple of more months. They gave they extended the deadlines to fill out the census. Therefore, some census data is still yet to come. Some of the states are expecting to get the results until September, which is right now putting a huge wrench into campaigns, because right now people don't know if they'll be able to run for Congress because they don't know if the district that they live in is going to change. So they can't even get their campaign together right now. And these are the conversations that I've been having with, people.
Some of your clients.
Yeah, so that's a big issue. You know, like everybody that works in political campaigns is sort of just like sitting there and waiting to see what's going to happen, so they can get their stuff together and get working, which, you know, makes everything very stressful because, you know, political campaigns need to start now. I know that is next year that is elections, but they need to really start now.
But you have to do a lot of your preparations and your strategy, and you have to think about how much you're going to dedicate from your funds to each segment of your strategy. So of course you need that information. So technically you're telling me that the district is people work, you know, like a certain amount of people that live in this kind of like semi-geographical like groupings, and then and there is one representative that comes to like present the voice from all those people. So we could say for every 100 citizens, which is not the number, I'm making it up. You have like a one representative. That's the concept.
There's this many people, so that means that they get this many representatives, and then there is 20% of that is Latinx, and so and then the other 30% is blah 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 and blah 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 blah. So once you have all those percentages and the amounts of people, then they start drawing districts around that, and it's supposed to be a fair process in which, you know, they want to give everyone their proper representation based on those percentages. So it's like, some states vary in how they do it. Some of them have redistricting commissions. So about 15 states have that, but 15, 1-0. Not all the states do. In some states, it's basically it's just like at the state level, they just like draw them. So and then the government signs it. If the state is run locally all by the same party, like the governor and the state senate is all run by the same party, then it goes really quickly and it gets approved. And some people don't like that, because then you have this other issue that's called gerrymandering, and basically it's like they're manipulating these drawings to benefit one party, or one demographic.
So technically we want, like, if we have a population that has 60% orange and 40% purple, we want each district to have 60% orange and 40% purple within those boundaries, right?
Correct.
And the gerrymandering then is when you draw those districts, you manipulate those boundaries to favor one party or the other by grouping, more people of one in one district and breaking out the other. So
exactly.
Technically,
so you reassign. You could even reassign the majority into small groups, so that way they're never majority.
Yes. So it's a way of benefiting minority government.
Well, that's exactly what everyone in the news is saying, that the most affected are people of color, communities of color, and Latinx. And this is where we want to talk about why this matters and what we can do, what we can do at the community level, and what the political campaigns can do as well. Because sometimes, these things go to court and there's a long process, but at the end of the day, the districts have to be drawn, because there's going to be an election next year. So, sometimes this gerrymandering could be inevitable, especially in states that are fully controlled by one party. So what can we do anyway? There's always something we can do. I mean, this podcast is about empowerment.
Yes.
So there is always something that we can do.
And we know it's important because to put it into the bigger kind of context of what we have been talking about, also because how we are represented affects what things get done at the federal level, right? Like we just saw today one party that has minority, that doesn't have minority, that is a minority, the minority in the Congress, get in the way of moving forward legislation for the People Act that people want, that has a very high rate of approval. So this is what happens when through redistricting, through readjusting who gets seats, who gets representatives, can interfere in the democratic process of how we get things done. And the democratic process says that the will of the majority should be, that is always a negotiation, right? But it should be honored, that majority rules in that sense. And that's why elections, intermediate elections, or like every 4 years are so important. But when this happens, we have situations in which the will that will benefit the most people, and in many times communities that have been marginalized for decades or generations, continue to be left at the margins, even though now they have power. They're supposed to have power. We voted for certain power. We want.
Yeah, or even if they're majority.
Yeah.
Right. Because they are majority in some districts, and then if they draw a line right in the middle of the community,
fracture you,
then we're in trouble. So
what are some of the things that you that when you were thinking about, what are some of the things that we can all, how do we begin to get involved?
There's a couple of things. So first of all, and I'm sure that by now all the people on this podcast have realized that we are Democrats.
Yes. Progressives.
Yes. So Republicans are taking advantage of the fact that Latinx may not be as engaged in U.S. politics, or that they have not filled out the census as much as white Americans. Now, there's several reasons for this. I'm going to talk from experience, and we worked on a census campaign. We started working 2 years ago on this.
Okay.
So we worked on it a full year, and
you and the Moira team.
Yes. And basically, we ran into a lot of issues. One, there was a lot of confusion. There were certain groups that were sending out fake census forms to confuse people. Yes.
Isn't that illegal?
Yes. So they were sending them to communities of color, and there would be tweets that we would see, and people were saying like, "What is this?" And it was like the census had not even sent out their forms, and they were asking the citizenship question in those fake forms and things like that. They were meant to confuse. When we were running a bunch of digital campaigns around the country, many of the people were commenting saying, why do we need to get counted if things are going to stay the same? If nothing is going to happen. If you're asking always for us to take action on something and nothing ever changes. We still don't have higher minimum wage. We still, people are just, naming the usual shopping list of issues that Latinx have, and just say, nothing has changed over the years. And hey, I mean, we talked about this in this podcast. It has happened. Things have not
valid.
Changed. It's very valid. So obviously there's disengagement, and so they're taking advantage of that. Most voters don't even know that this is happening, or don't even know what it is, or don't even know how it works. So, for example, there was, I read in the news back in 2019 that the California Redistricting Commission that was going to work for this year. So they were recruiting 2 years ago for this year. They extended their deadline because there weren't enough Latinx applying to this commission. And they were like, the amount of applications that we have are not reflecting the community that we have. So it's like, if it's like, 40% white and 60% Latinx, and we're having just 80% white Americans apply, then this is not representative of our demographics. So we can't really run a commission that will be fair if we don't have the right representation. And I'm just sitting here like, why is it that they're not applying? Why? Why, Ceci? Why is there
and I think, you and I, when we were preparing, we always have these conversations in which we allow ourselves space to push back and forth. And obviously, I think there is a level. It would be simple to say, we as community or Latinx, we're not interested, we're not involved. And I think there is a level of that. I think we're exhausted. I think our communities are frontline communities. I think that we have been doing a lot of work with very little support through a worldwide pandemic. We are vulnerable for many we're not out of the woods. Our communities are not out of the woods. And I think that we are exhausted. And to try to think on top of that, to envision a system that is intentionally complicated is a systemic barrier, right? So it is not just that we have been ground to, we're being like put through the grinder and come out of the end like absolutely as dust, but also it's complex. And I mean, I have to look at the little like dibujitos, I need like simplification to understand what does gerrymandering mean? Like, explain it to me. Like, I mean, sometimes it kind of makes sense, and then I'll be like, can I? I always figure like if I understood it, I can explain it, and I couldn't explain it, and I had to go back, right? And I have to look at the graph or the explanation again. So these are things that I have done systemically, consistently in this country. They have happened all over the world, but like in the United States, there's a tradition for it, and right now we are in a moment in which, instead of us, like this idea that the past elections were fraudulent, and like instead of recognizing and saying we're gonna make sure we can eliminate barriers so that most of the citizens can vote, there's this consistent idea of impeding the vote. So I think that we don't participate in things like commissions, and sometimes we don't even know that that's how it's supposed to work. Yeah. I think it's also a level of
they might not know
ignorance or lack of education. Like when you were talking to me about the commissions, I was like, yes, I know what a commission is, and then I was like, are we talking about the same like then you explained it to me, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that that's how it's done in California. And you're saying, well, that's how it's done in 15 states. How is it done in the other states? So it even depends on
it's all very different in each state.
Even the barriers are not like, oh, it's the same barrier. No, it's like all flavors of barriers.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, it's exhausting to try to think, and after, most of us are out there in the day, in the grind. Like, you come home and to then have to go out again to figure out how to, how to become actively politically, when I think many of us even have, like, I don't know, myself, I think in other moments, it was difficult I was like, I'm not interested in politics. Like, politics are dirty. Why would I dedicate my energy to something that I think
I've heard this before.
Yeah.
Politics are dirty. Why do I need to mess with those things?
And so, but everything is political. The language we use is political. The clothes we buy is political. Like, how we support our community is political. Like, I think it has to take to reimagine and reshape those narratives. And that's what you and I are doing these conversations, because we believe that our communities are absolutely interested in co-creating a better future. We just don't know always how.
Yeah, and that's the thing. All of these inactions have consequences.
Yes.
For every action, there's a reaction. For every inaction, there is also a reaction. And not being active in politics, like not participating in the census, not going out to vote, that has a huge reaction. And I know that we're all tired of being stepped on and being ignored and all of that, but it is at this time, in Helen's words, we need us.
Yes.
We need us. We need us to step up. We need us to take action. Even if we're tired, it's the time in which we say, we can't let the others do things to us.
Yeah.
We got to take the reins of our future and of our present and of our livelihoods. Like, we can't just leave
it on the hands.
And I said that before. It's like, just like sit there and just complain. Like, I know so many people. And I'm sure all the people out there that are listening, they know someone like that.
And
they don't do anything, and then they just complain. So it's like, if you haven't done action, then please don't complain.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Like I always tell people, like, if you haven't even taken the time, and I know that there is also barriers to voting. So I understand my privilege when I can say, on this day, I will find the time to go vote. Absolutely. I know that there are barriers, but we have to prioritize. And I think that that's one thing that we have maybe still not understood, like the very real, because I think sometimes it feels very, very far away. That the capital on the hill feels really far away from your everyday life. And I think that that's when the work that you do, which is like, how do we think of a strategies to reach out our communities in ways that they understand? Is it like digital? Is it like door to door? Is it from people from the neighborhood with people from the and I think that is changing.
The answer is all of the above.
Yes. I mean, it is changing a little bit.
Because the thing is that in many districts, and I've seen this happen, if there isn't enough, or maybe like less than 20% Latinx presence in that district, many campaigns don't bother to create a specific campaign for Latinos. So but guess what? Sometimes that 20% is the one that gets the vote.
Yeah.
And it really upsets me, because it's like, we need to cater to everyone in the district, even if they're a minority, because everyone votes.
Yes.
And so it even if it's digital, even if it's something less expensive, even if it's something at a smaller scale, something should be done in especially if a district has been heavily redrawn to take away voices, or to a group's disadvantage, then the more the campaigns need to say, we are not going to let them silence this group. We're going to give them a voice. So we want to open up the space for them to make their voice heard, and reach out to them and engage them.
And I want us to consider is like, why is it that there's so many initiatives to try to get us out of the vote? Because we are powerful, because we showed that when we come out and when we vote, things go our way. And that is a scary thing, when you know that we live in a country that is being carefully curated to benefit certain groups over the others, right? It's been systemic. We think it's just the way things are, it's the natural order. And the more we read, the more we learn, the more we have these conversations, we realize that this country has been carefully curated and created. It's very intentional in policy, in immigration policy, in who gets to have power and who doesn't. And so why is there so many intention to take the vote away from us? Because we have power when we stand together. And that is a scary thing for people who have been in power for a long time, and that who are having a hard time envisioning a different future, a different world. But we're ready. We are ready to do that. I think as tired as you were saying as we are, I think that there has been we need to not lose sight that there is a lot of work being done to take this away from us. The ability for us to vote, the ability for us to be counted. There is a lot of trickery, there is a lot of cheating, there is a lot of things that might be legal but are not just. And if what we're doing is pursuing our justice, and what we're doing is pursuing like equality, what we're doing is envisioning a world with a dignified life, that's what maybe where we go to like motivate ourselves. It's for us, it's for our future, for our generations behind us. But
that's right. So so what can we do? Because this is always we like to end the show by saying what can we do? So what can we do in the future? Everyone, please fill out the census.
Fill out the census. Completen el censo.
People are afraid that they're going to take their information and do something with it, but this is what they're doing with it. Mm-hmm. This is what they're doing with your information. They're trying to give or take away your voice. Mm-hmm. Or they're trying to give or take away representatives in Washington. So this is what they're doing with it. There are states right now that are losing representatives.
Yes.
They don't have any other visibility. Mm-hmm. Like this is their visibility. There's no other way in which they count the population other than the census. So, this is the way. So in 9 years, please fill out the census.
Yes.
And fill it out truthfully. Because I know some people are like, what if, there were many questions like, what if there's many people in my house? Should we count them all? What if we're undocumented? Yes, yes. The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Even if you're undocumented, yes.
You count.
Please get counted. Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. Because that's how they build schools.
That's how the funds get distributed, la platita.
Yeah, that's how the funds get distributed. It's just so important. People think it's just like, oh, it's this like thing that is...
It's
like
not
my
just
husband says, it's a tostón. No, it's not a tostón. It's actually something very important.
Yes.
So that's one. Two, as you mentioned, there is the For the People Act. And one of the provisions that the For the People Act wants to pass is that every state will have a independent commission for redistricting. And that's great because that will be, and they're thinking there will be 1/3 Republican, 1/3 Democrat, 1/3 Independent. So they're trying to really be tripartisan, and they're trying to be fair with this. So that's important. That's, that provision, about we talked about that a couple episodes ago, voter suppression, and then now this redistricting. So call your congressperson and tell them that you want them to pass this act.
Also call your senators, and especially if you are in one of the states that are part of the majority right now, that being the Democratic Party, that did not vote for it. People who refuse to engage in eliminating the filibuster, which is another difficult term that we have not even get there. I know. But if you call your Congress, call your senators, ask them, this is important. It is one of the most important legislations to come our way in decades. Since the Voting Act.
Yeah. And then, as I mentioned, campaigns.
What kind of campaigns?
Campaigns, as I mentioned, even if the Latinx are not a huge majority or a huge percentage, let's still engage them.
But it's it's the second biggest voting bloc in the nation.
I know, but
you cannot afford it.
And sometimes I can't blame all of that because it's just the whole machine. Like we're talking about funding. So they're not gonna be funding for something, and like it's just like, anywhere from like, the small grassroots campaign all the way to the top funding. Please take this into account.
Yeah.
Even if they're in a small percentage, and I'm not talking about small like 0.1%. I'm like, if it's a sizable percentage, then let's engage them, because that could actually change the election. That could actually really influence the numbers if they're engaged. And again, it's not just like a Spanish language ad or a translated ad. Those who out there, el que tiene el guante que se lo achante.
Al que le quede.
No translated ads. Actually engage Latinx authentically in a way that they feel heard and seen.
Yeah.
And then finally, juntos se puede, right?
Claro que juntos se puede. That's the only way we can do it, together. That is why you say, united we stand, divided we fall.
Exactly. Like we need to. There's civil rights groups that are suing right now.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't just be a civil rights group, like a Latino civil rights group. It should be people out in the streets protesting.
Yeah.
And saying, no, we're not gonna take this. This was not fair. This is not fair. So, the more that the government is seeing that people care, because like if they see that people don't care, they're just like sneakily go in and just change things. And
then, it's like we said
it. That's it. Nobody knows about it. And it's
inaction is a decision, the same way that silence is a decision and it's a response. And there's consequences to our silence and to our inaction. And most of those consequences are they get away to do whatever they want to do, and then we don't get to complain. Or, and so that is part of like participación ciudadana, civic engagement. And because el pueblo unido jamás será vencido, como dicen en la tierrita.
All right, well, that is all the time that we have. And
Thank you.
Just letting you guys know, next week is going to be our last episode of the season. We're going to take a break in July and August. We're going to be working on some very exciting new episodes and very exciting guests that we're working on. And we'll be coming back in September fully refreshed and ready to go and ready to take those that are against us. I'm just kidding. And so in the meantime, while we're preparing the next season, please email us and text us, share, tell your friends. Please tell your friends that you like this if you like it. If you like it, please tell your friends.
And give us a review, give us a rating.
That's right.
Send us some comments.
Yes,
look at the TikToks. They're kind of funny.
and give us ideas on topics that you want us to tackle. If you want us to say, please. To talk about something in depth, email me, clem@latinxyzpod.com, and then latinxyzpod on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok. We have a landing page. Go to moirastudio.com, and there's a website for the podcast where you can leave some comments. And that is all for today. Thank you so much, Ceci.
Thank you. Me encanta verte. You're the best. Beso. Hasta la próxima.